Hello and welcome back to Down to Earth, everybody. Melissa and I are excited to have you joining us again today. Welcome, Uncle Marty.
Thank you.
Good morning, Uncle Marty.
Good morning, Melissa.
I feel like I just saw you like 2 hours ago. It was a little more than that.
It was a bit more than 2 hours, but we did see each other last night,
Yeah, we've been a little bit busy. You missed out on some fun, Caleb.
Okay.
So you know
fill
about
me
this.
in.
Well, you know about the marriage rededication we're doing for my adopted parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's their 25th wedding anniversary, and they said, hey, we really want to do something special to like rededicate our marriage to God and all that. And so we've been working for the last week and a half to get everything ready. Her wedding dress arrived day before yesterday. We set up the reception hall until 10:30 last night?
Something like that.
It looks really good. I've made some special Turkish lemonade. Because my adopted dad really likes Turkish lemonade, and we're going to be putting it in these little like plastic goblet thingies. And so Uncle Marty was putting gold sugar rims, like you see in the fancy goblets. And so there he was, half the night.
One by one.
So
Quite a night.
Poor Uncle Marty got put to work a little bit last night.
Well, first hauling the chairs up, and then hauling tables up, and
Yep, we had balloons everywhere.
yeah, you put a lot of balloons up.
Finished frosting the cake right before I got here this morning. So
Been busy.
got the
You
last
must have
little bit.
only had 2 or 3 hours of sleep last night.
Nah,
So
we're
you must
good.
be pretty tired, Melissa.
No, we're good. I'm excited to hear the stories you've got for us this morning, Uncle Marty.
Yes, well, I've just always been amazed of how God put so many pieces of a puzzle together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the stories I want to share, of just many pieces of how God brings divine providence and coincidences together. I don't like to call them coincidence, but his divine providence of how he puts many pieces of a puzzle together. My wife and I were invited to another country to go do some training on mission and how to share your faith with Muslims. We come to this church, and we were visiting several churches in the area, speaking in the evening, in the morning, at Sabbath school, and all across the capital city of another country. And then from there, we spent about 2 or 3 weeks doing training around the country. Anyhow, Sabbath morning, I am standing up to speak, and in the audience, I see 2 old friends. And I'm really excited. They were the parents of one of my colleagues that used to be one of my colleagues in the office years ago when I worked for Middle East Union. And she had been very close. We'd come to know each other very well. At first, when I arrived at the union, due to security issues of working in the Middle East, I'd been told, don't tell anyone, you're just the Adventist mission director. Don't tell anyone you are planning to promote underground house churches across the union. This needs to be a big secret. And so I'm not one to really be a big secret person, but I do like to protect the ministry, so I do. And so one of the first people I start sharing with was Basma. And if you ever see this, Basma, shout out to you. She now lives in Loma Linda, but we worked for many years together. And she was almost like my right hand. She was always helping, dreaming how we could really expand an underground house church movement.
I met her when we were all at Loma Linda a couple months ago. Do you remember? She was a little shorter lady. She came and hang out with us on
Real thin.
Yeah, Friday night. She was
okay,
really
yeah.
bubbly. She was really fun.
She was, and we used to just have a lot of fun together, working and planning, and we actually got a scholarship for her to go to Newbold to have an intensive program for 1 year to be focused on mission and training and working for Muslims. So it was really exciting to see her when we were in Loma Linda, as you mentioned, but I was in the church speaking, and all of a sudden I had no idea I'd see them, and there was her parents in the congregation.
Oh, wow.
And I was really excited. As soon as I was done, I walk up and they jump up and we give each other a big hug, and we went to eat in their home later in the next couple of days. But what was exciting for me was I didn't know they had anything to do with this, but I had had a certain sermon prepared, or Sabbath school, I can't remember which one of the two it was, and they told me there was going to be a Muslim in the congregation. So I was kind of, oh no, I'm going to have to change a little bit what I was saying. I was a bit nervous about this. How am I going to do it? Well, after church, after potluck, I saw her brother-in-law. Was sitting at a table with another Arab, and it looked to me clearly that he was also from Muslim background, or maybe even a Muslim. And so I come up to the table, And I introduce myself, and her brother-in-law introduces me to the person there, and we start to speak. And that just turns out to be an amazing experience. So he says, I want to share with you the person that you thought that they told you is Muslim. He's actually a follower of Jesus, and this is him. And I say, well, tell me the story. What has happened here? I'm very interested to know what's going on and to know your story. So he starts to share his story. And he started out saying, you know, I still am, but I was, even from a young child, I was very devout. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to have, besides the regular secular training, I had religious training after class. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I had finished high school, I went into the seminary. And I studied to be a Muslim religious leader, and that's really where my heart was. I really wanted to follow after God. I not only did undergraduate, I did first a master's, and then I went on to get a doctoral degree. And in God's great providence of things, God just led me from one step to another until I had eventually risen to, basically, in his country, they had one of the most influential Muslim organizations in their country. And he had risen to be number 2 in that organization.
Well, and these kinds of organizations have a very far-reaching influence.
They do. And his influence was clearly beyond just his own country. And then something happened. And an old friend of his from primary and secondary school, who was actually a Christian, was getting married. And he was getting married kind of later in life. Mm-hmm. And he sent him invitation to come to his wedding, never imagining he would actually come, because he's now a very high-profile person in the country. And so he actually says, you know what, I'm going to surprise him, because it was going to be, his friend was a Christian, it was going to be done in a big church, and both had kind of risen in their respective areas. Mm-hmm. And he had become an influential business person and was having a nice wedding. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to go. I will surprise people, and I will actually go to his wedding. And so he comes there kind of with his entourage, arrives to the church for the wedding, and as he walks in the church, the most amazing thing happens. He walks in, and he walks in the door, and it feels like he hits a waterfall. And he backs up, and he hits, like, again, he feels this, but like a spiritual waterfall. It's nothing there, but he touches it, and he feels like this peace. And he walks in, and he passes, and it's just like this peace. He walks back out, and it's like this waterfall of peace falling over the door of the church. And he says, I've never felt this. I've been a religious leader. I've searched for God all my life, but I have never felt this deep, deep sense of peace as I'm feeling right now today. And this, almost this physical thing, and he walks in and back the door, and he says, people must be thinking I'm crazy, what's going on? I need to go down and sit down, but I need to do this one more time again. I want to feel this peace. And so he shares this story with me there of how this happens, and he goes back and forth. He goes in to sit to honor his friend. He sits for the whole wedding. He congratulates his friend. His friend is overjoyed because they had been quite close friends as children. And years has passed, and he thanks him profusely for inviting him to his wedding. He goes back and does this thing in and out of the door several more times.
They've got to think he's crazy.
Yeah, people think he's crazy. Kind of his driver's looking at him like, what's going on here? And he just doesn't want to say anything.
Let me just go walk in and out of the door a few times here. It's like when you're a kid and you're at the airport and you hop on the escalators and ride the escalators up and down, up and down.
Sounds like what my kids did when they were little. Back and forth and back and forth. Anyhow, he goes home that night. And then he has this very powerful dream. And he sees this long hallway, and he has this sense like it's a church hallway, this long hallway. And at the same time, at the entrance of that hallway, he feels this same peace. But he looks at the end of the hallway down far, and he sees a man, his face shining like the sun, his feet shining like golden bronze. And he's saying, come, my son, come, my son. And he wakes up, what is this meaning? But I'm a Muslim. Why are you calling me? What is the meaning of the church? And he keeps thinking of this extraordinary peace he had in the church. And he goes back to sleep. 3 nights later, he has the same dream. And He has again about a week later the same dream again. This time it says, come my son, if you follow me, you will always feel that peace. Not just in the dream, not just when you went to that church one time, but you will always feel this peace. And now he's turned all upside down. What do I do? And he goes and talks with his boss and says, listen what happened to me. And his boss, amazingly, wasn't that opposed. He says, well...
Now, this is the boss of, like, his spiritual hierarchy or boss of work?
It was both, because his full-time work was...
Ministry.
Minister and a religious leader. So he goes to number one.
So it's like going to your GC president and
Something.
saying, hey, I just...
This is like a vice president of the GC. He goes to his president and tells him what's happened. And the guy's kind of quiet. He doesn't get vindictive. He says, well, you know, we believe in dreams. And you better follow what you're being told. I won't oppose you. But he's a bit scared, and he's really confused, not knowing what to do. And he says, well, at least I need to get baptized. I know that if you become a follower of Jesus, you need to get baptized. But I don't really want to give up my job or anything, and maybe I can stay right in my job and be a follower of Jesus in my job. My boss wasn't seemed opposed to the idea. And he waits till late at night, and this is a country that has a strong minority Christian group and an old Christian church, and so he goes to the head of that group, and he tells him what has happened. He says, look, you're asking me to do the impossible. If I were to arrange to have you baptized, you know, the country would turn upside down here if that leaked out. I mean, it's going to bring repercussions against my community. Why don't you go talk to the evangelical church over there? And so he kicks the bucket over. And so he goes over to them and he tells them, please, I had this and this happen to me. Would you please baptize me? And they said, look, if this escaped out and they knew, if it hit the public or the news that we baptized a high-profile person like you, we would be in real problems. Why don't you go talk to this other group? So he goes to this other Christian group. Would you baptize? And they say, look, it's really too dangerous. Now he's getting real. Who are these followers of Jesus anyway? None of them are willing to baptize me.
It's funny, but it's really sad because you have somebody who wants to follow Jesus, and the followers of Jesus are scared to stand up for him.
Now, having lived in some of these countries, I understand those followers of Jesus, and maybe like I shared before, I used to work for what today is the Middle East North Africa Union, and just get permission to paint a church in some of those countries takes 5 years. So there's definite persecution, and many times they're scared because it is known to have secret police pretend. I used to live in Russia back right when communism had fallen, and I was there in, what was it, like 93 or so. And the pastor told me, see that man over there? Who always even comes, because they had this house church. You know, this person is a KGB agent. He pretends to be with us, but we all know he's an actual agent. So we have to be a little bit careful what we do. So in many of these countries, they know many times people come pretending to be someone who they're not, and if you agree to do something, next thing you know, you're in handcuffs and going to jail and just disappear and no way to get out. So there's some real issues that you need to be careful with. So I'm not blaming these people, but he's sharing his side of the story. To be fair to Christians in the region who deal with sometimes very difficult and unfair restrictions against them. And so he finally says, God, he just has this feeling, if I'm baptized and I'm made new, I'm going to feel this peace forever. And
like the waterfall.
Like the waterfall. He just wants to feel that waterfall. And so finally they say, you know, if you go talk to this other group, maybe they will help you. Because he went back to one of those three that he met, and they says, well, there's this other little group. So he goes and meets them, and they say, look, for us it's dangerous as well, but we know these people who are involved with ministry, and if you go about 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe they would do it. So he goes and talks with this other group. And they say, the pastor says, look, it's dangerous. Like everyone said, I believe your story. I know that you're not lying. Too many things have happened, so I believe you. but I would only do it if you come to my church at 3 in the morning. And I'll do a quiet thing. You keep it secret. I keep it secret. I won't tell anyone. You don't tell anyone. And then I will baptize you. So he makes sure no one is following him. He thinks he doesn't use his drive or anything. He drives himself and comes quietly to the church, leaves his car a few blocks away, walks to it, makes sure he doesn't see anyone watching, and he comes into the church. The pastor quickly takes him in. They have a little ceremony. They pray together. He baptizes him there, and then he leaves. He thinks everything is fine, 2-3 days. So it was maybe 10:30 at night, and he hears a knock at his door. But the knock was much stronger, and it didn't sound like a friend or family. It didn't sound like a spiritual seeker that sometimes his home was usually people coming and going from his home all the time. And in that part of the world, many people would just feel comfortable to open the door and come in. Again, he hears a knock at his door. Oh no, who is this? What has happened? He goes to the door, and there's his worst fears. There's the secret police. And they said, can we come into your house, please? And he says, oh no, now I'm in trouble. Now I'm in big trouble. If the secret police comes in his country, even if you're a big politician or a big powerful person, it's like your worst fears. I mean, you can just disappear. And they says, relax. We're not here to scare you. We're actually here to help you.
Oh no.
You're a high profile person, and if it comes out what happened 2 nights ago, that you got baptized, we know everything. No need to lie to us, no need to hide. We know everything from beginning to end. We know your story. We're here to help. We just want to keep things in the country stable and not turned upside down right now. If this were to leak, what would happen? It would create problems for us. People might rise up and even hurt Christians. We've already arranged at a certain embassy, and they will give you a visa. Just go tomorrow, tell them your name. They will already know you. They will already know everything, and they will issue a visa to you tomorrow. And as soon as you can bring your things to a close, your family, you need to fly out to their country. He looks at them, he says, are you serious? He says, it is. You go tomorrow to the embassy, you'll see everything's already taken care of for you.
Oh my word.
Wow.
He says, we can't give you any money. We know you're not a rich man. Spiritual people in our country don't have a lot of money, but inshallah, God, Allah will take care of you. As quickly as they came, they left. He couldn't believe, because he thought he could have just disappeared with them. I mean, they're known to be brutal in their country, and to treat him with the respect they did, he was just like taken back.
So even as a second kind of in command or whatever, you could still disappear? And
You could just disappear.
wow.
I mean, the secret police is pretty brutal. I mean, they're almost like a machinery unto themselves in this particular country. Even a president will fear the secret police.
Wow.
So he went to the embassy the next morning. To make a long story short, someone there welcomes him at the embassy, takes him right up. He doesn't have to stand in line or anything. They says, have you come with your passport? He said, yes. Do you have your family's passport? Yes. Well, can you stamp it right here? Welcome to our country. You can leave anytime you'd like. The sooner the better, we understand.
Oh my.
Wow.
He, to this day, has no idea how that was all arranged, how the secret police knew everything.
In such short order, too, just a couple days.
Just
right?
a couple days. So next thing, he finds himself in the country where I was preaching and teaching there. And he's asking himself, what do I do here? He doesn't know. He's kind of lost. He has enough money to start off. He rents a little tiny apartment in not a very good part of town. So this is like just a big downgrade for him, you know, all of a sudden, from living with his nice house, with his family around him, and now they're all cramped in a little tiny apartment in kind of a low-end part of town. He buys a little car, almost out of money, and his car breaks down. It's not running right. And he's thinking, what am I going to do? So he gets in his car, he makes it to the mechanic shop that he had seen, and he was praying, God, help me find a mechanic that can fix this. You know, it's very expensive in this Western country to fix your car. Please take me to someone who'll help me. and not charge me an exorbitant price. And to his delight, he sees an Arab who's the owner of the mechanic shop. And he's like, wow. And he says to him, look, I just came. I'm a poor refugee. Is there any way you can help me? I don't know a thing about mechanics, and my car's not working right. So the owner of the shop comes over, looks at the car. He's able to get it going quite inexpensively. And one of the things that are very big in Arabs' mind is asking who you are. You know, we've talked about they want to know what you are. They want to know if you're Christian, Muslim, and this and that, and back and forth. And as they start talking, the story comes tumbling out of what has happened. They ask, well, he says, I'm Muslim, but I'm actually a follower of Jesus. And the man gets all excited and starts sharing with him. And as soon as they find out, he says, you're not going anywhere. You're coming today to eat at my house.
The owner of the mechanic shop?
The owner of the mechanic shop. And he says, you're coming to eat at my house today. He says, well, let me call my family. Go home now. He fixed his car. You don't owe me a penny. Go get your family, and you're coming to lunch. He calls his wife, get ready.
It's one of those last-minute calls. My dad used to make them all the time back in Nigeria. He'd be like, all the officials from the union are here, Gail. You better have food ready for 30 people in 2 hours.
So his wife, they make them feel loved and at home. He comes with all his family. They eat together, and they start a story. He calls his sister-in-law and says, guess what has happened? Basma. And she says, please, please don't take him to church. It will destroy all his ministry. You meet with him at his house. You lead him in a way. And it was just like, wow, God, what an amazing thing you have done. And you know, he has now started an online ministry where he's leading people, and people are seeing him as a big reformer. And I just wish, my dream for him is that he could just be released. Instead of working this 9-to-5 job, low-end pay, barely able to survive, that we could set him free to really do ministry full-time. And there's many people like him across the country, across the world. We have found that God has uniquely brought Muslims and other minority people groups to our churches. And I know probably another 10 or 12 people like him that need to be released so they could do full-time ministry. And I just see how God has brought many providential happenings like this, and it's just amazing.
I was just thinking, at the beginning of the story, you were talking about how while you were there, the church members all knew there was a Muslim attending, and you went and met him. But I was kind of thinking, how many of us know where our church members are from? I mean, I go to a fairly large church. What minority people groups are at my church? Mm-hmm. Are there minority people groups who might have the ability to reach their people in a way that I never could? And am I fostering and building relationships with them? Am I helping to enable and empower them as well with the limited tools that I might know? How are we helping to network and support each other? I don't know, that was just a thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Well, there's several things which I would challenge. Most of our churches' divisions in areas where the church is working, other places at union levels, they have an AMR department, which is the Adventist Muslim Relations Department. They have it at the GC, at different division union levels around the world.
That's what your wife does.
Exactly. My wife works for the division, so they're always looking for people in churches. So if anyone who's watching this program, if they call the number on the screen, you can either contact us and we can pass your name, or you can contact the second number on the screen. If you know someone in the local church, here's a Muslim in my church, maybe he has a bigger calling than whatever he's doing to reach back to his own people. And this is how many of our ministries have happened, as we have found a Muslim background or a Hindu background or a Buddhist or a tribal, and then he feels this calling to go back to his people,
Yeah,
or her people.
I think most people don't realize that there's resources out there, because I work for your wife. And I know when we go around and do trainings and meet with churches and stuff, it more often than not, people are like, wait, there's resources like this at our church? And I don't think people realize that there are resources.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people out there with a lot of knowledge for all of us to learn from.
Yes.
Well, that was a really, really, really cool story.
Really
I
neat.
feel like this really just flew by.
It did.
Just really cool to see how God works and puts all those pieces together and just has it all arranged just so it'd go off smoothly. like going to the mechanic, you think that's going to be, just a terrible day. And how could this week get any worse?
Well, Uncle Marty, why don't we take a moment here and maybe you can pray. And let's just ask God to both help the person that we've been hearing about today as he's figuring out his ministry and the other people like him. Because like you mentioned, there's people all over the world who have these connections and abilities to have an impact on large groups of people. And often it's just them being able to make the right connections, to see God, and to be able to have the resources to make that happen. Would you like to say a prayer for us as we close out?
Dear God in heaven, I just want to ask for our brother that we have been talking about this morning, telling the wonderful story of how you've put these whole pieces of a puzzle together. First, his Christian friend from when he was a child, remembering him and sending him an invitation. He jumping kind of across tradition barriers in his country to actually go to the wedding, and you to pour out your wonderful presence that he felt it, and then him to step forward and finally find someone and baptize him, and even the secret police who went in a nice way and didn't hurt him, and the embassy of that country who was open to help him, and then his car breaking down and you taking him to a mechanic that had an open heart, a sharing heart, a heart of mission for you. And I just pray for everyone in this chain for Basma who did this. And I want to pray for all the other people I know that are like him, so many others who really need to be able to be released so that they can go into full-time ministry as well. So I just pray for all of them and the many other people that we haven't met today. And if there's those other people, that you will help identify them, help us find them so that they can go also into full-time ministry for you. We thank you for hearing our prayer in your most loving and precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys for joining us again on Down to Earth. Looking forward to spending more time with you next time.